Hey guys, welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles! Resolve. In the last episode, we had a little tap dance of deduction, and that led us to finding Judge Jigoku in this large trunk here. And now we are facing him, so let's just talk to him. I was really hoping beyond hope not to find you here, you know.
But you're not entirely unsurprised, I take it.
No, quite. I just wish it was some other way.
Well, are you ever going to introduce me?
Oh, your reputation precedes you, Mr. Sholmes. I've heard stories of many of your exploits.
Excuse my manners, Sholmes. This is Mr. Jigoku, my old friend and traveling companion.
The devil's is in the details, Mr. Makotoba. I believe you meant to say your old friend and traveling companion, who made the cowardly decision to flee the country without a word to anyone when things turned sour.
I see my reputation precedes me as well. What an honor.
Well, Seishiro, are you going to explain all this?
You know it all by now, I imagine. What you didn't know, of course, is that 3 days ago, on the night before our arrival in Britain, an attempt was made on my life here on this very ship.
By the Reaper of the Bailey? Yes, I've since heard. Because you were once persecuted by the Reaper, weren't you? 10 years ago now, mind you.
And I had no idea at the time what a dangerous individual he was. Anyway, when we arrived in London to find the symposium was postponed until goodness knows when, it became all too apparent to me that I might very well be targeted again.
So you decided to flee the capital without saying a word to me about it?
I'm afraid so, yes. Of course I realize now that I really ought to have confided in you.
It's somewhat surprising, I must say.
What is?
Well, first-class cabins aboard luxury steamships are in very short supply. It's more than a little hard to believe that this one just happened to be available.
So says the protagonist of some colorful short stories. Well, I don't care for your opinion. The cabin did just happen to be available, so I purchased a ticket, and here I am.
I've just seen for myself the obvious remnants of that incident in this cabin. So you'd already purchased your return ticket before we even docked in Dover, had you? To prevent anyone else taking this cabin seeing the evidence, is that it?
Eugene, I have nothing to say to you.
Well, in a mere 5 minutes, this ship will set off in its onward voyage and not make port again until Italy. I'm afraid we must insist that you disembark with us at once.
You have no jurisdiction over my movements.
We have this, Seishiro. Take it.
What is it?
It's a subpoena from the Old Bailey. You're a man of the law. You know what the ramifications of ignoring a document like this from the British courts would be.
You came prepared then, Eugene.
Come on, let's go.
One moment.
What is it, Sholmes?
Inside Mr. Jigoku's trunk, I found this rather fascinating trinket.
What is that, Seishiro?
I can't help you, I'm afraid. Some small component for something. But what? I have no idea.
By the look on his face, I think he genuinely doesn't know.
Well, let us pocket it as a small souvenir of our brief sojourn in France.
The small component has been entered in the court record. Small component, a small machine part that Mr. Sholmes found in Judge Jigoku's cabin on the SS grounds. And this seems like a part of the pocket watch. Okay. Well, young Naruhodo, I think we've done as much as we can, I'm afraid. The rest will be on the shoulders of you and your assistant. Oh, okay, so maybe I should have just played a little longer. We're back to the trial as it seems. 3rd November, 12:10 p.m., the Old Bailey courtroom. Kazuma Asogi, I know you, and I know you wouldn't lie. But still, there's no doubt that you're holding something back. You know more than you're saying.
During the past 30 minutes while this court was adjourned, all possible efforts were expended. But sadly, Mr. Jigoku's whereabouts could not be ascertained.
We must accept the unfortunate conclusion that the Reaper has already done the deed. There's no sense in wasting any more of the court's time. The prosecution calls for an immediate verdict.
Objection!
No, the trial cannot end now. You're a Japanese man, Ryunosuke. You should know when to lay down your sword. And you should know never to presume when the battle is won. The court has already been presented with all the evidence and heard all relevant testimony. And there can only be one conclusion: that the accused is guilty. All relevant testimony? Far from it. There's still a crucial witness, from whom the court is yet to hear a single word of testimony. In that case, call your witness to the stand at once, counsel. Yes, my lord. Tomorrow, if possible. The witness is already on his way and scheduled to arrive tomorrow. Who on earth is this crucial witness? Seishiro Jigoku, the very man allegedly murdered by the Reaper. Jigoku, you found him! But the investigations of every policing resource in the capital suggest that Jigoku is already dead. How in the name of God did you find the man? He was located in France during the recess, at the port of Dunkirk. Thanks to one of Mr. Herlock Sholmes' famous deductions. Herlock Sholmes? Inspector Gregson almost certainly met with Mr. Jigoku on the night of his death, because along with Prosecutor Asugi, Gregson was on a mission to assassinate the man. Which means that Seishiro Jigoku is the sole witness who can clarify exactly what happened aboard the SS Grouse on the 31st October. Well, it would appear that it's too soon to move to education at this point. The prosecution concurs. The court must hear Mr. Jigoku's testimony. No judgment should be passed until all testimony has been considered. In that case, I hereby call the end of today's proceedings. Court will reconvene at the same hour tomorrow. No objections from either side? No, my lord. No objections, my lord. We live to fight another day, by the skin of our teeth. Oh, okay, but we still have time, guys. We're just gonna keep on playing. I'm not gonna even save the game. We're just gonna keep on playing. No, there's no need. Let's just keep playing. The unexpected halt of the proceedings sent a clamor around the courtroom. But outside the Bailey, where Londoners knew nothing of the secret trial within, it was a typical still night. Then, at a little past 8 o'clock that evening, Mr. Sholmes and his partner returned to Baker Street. 3rd November, 8:07 p.m., Sholmes' suite.
We have returned, my dear fellows.
Welcome back to Britain, and thank you for your timely help.
Think nothing of it. I believe you've had an even more wearing day than Mikotoba and I know.
You could say that. we were on the brink of defeat in court earlier.
So this prosecutor Asugi had you on the ropes, did he? And he's your best friend, you say?
Well, he's not really the man I knew in Japan anymore. Kazuma's changed. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo. I mean, it's incredible. To think that he'd even entertain the idea of acting as the Reaper's assassin.
Well, nevertheless, you must introduce me. After all, I've only ever met the young man as a corpse.
When all this started, almost a year ago now, Mr. Sholmes still hasn't told us the truth about what really happened back then. About the motivation for what he himself described as a great detective's lie.
Now then, I must say, it's really quite a journey all the way to France.
Well, it is another country, Mr. Sholmes. So, what news of Jachigoku? We took him to Scotland Yard. The investigating detectives there have a lot of questions for the man. Poor Professor Mikotoba. This must be quite a shock for him.
Ah, yes. I picked this up at the telegraph office on our way home.
What is it?
Surely you haven't forgotten already. I put upon you for the matter only yesterday.
You put upon me, Sholmes? I had to fill out your telegram to Japan and foot the bill as well. Oh, you've had a reply already? What was so urgent though, Mr. Sholmes?
Such matters can't wait until later. I'm far too hungry for an involved conversation at present.
Well, that's good news, because supper's ready, everyone!
Ah, and what a feast it is! If I were none the wiser, I'd think the trial were won already. Roast beef, kippers, stew, steak, and kidney pie, Yorkshire pudding.
Tomorrow could be a very long day, so eat up!
In that case, I think I'll seat myself just here. This place appears to be the only one set with the helping of pheasant as well.
Oh, sorry, Hurley, not there!
Why ever not? Are we in set places this evening?
Yes, and that place is for Susie's daddy!
For me?
That's right, I made it special for you, Professor Mickey.
I see. Well, that's terribly kind of you.
It's a shame, really. What do you mean? Well, for a brief moment I believed it. That Susie and I were half-sisters, I mean. Oh! Iris, do you mean? Yes, I know now. I overheard yesterday. Secretly listened into the conversation you had. After I tricked you all into thinking I'd left.
What? What?
The misunderstanding arose because of that autopsy report from 10 years ago. But actually, it turned out that neither Dr. Wilson nor Professor Mikotoba are Iris's father.
Yes, about that, Iris. You know, I
know, you can't tell me all at the moment. Oh, Iris. The pheasant is by way of an apology. Sorry guys. The pheasant is by way of an apology. What is that? I really don't understand this sentence. Whatever. I'm sorry for eavesdropping. Oh, no, that's quite all right.
Then why don't I get any apologetic pheasant?
So just who is Iris's father? I suppose that's not something we'll be finding out today.
So then let us dine while our largely pheasantless plates are still piping hot.
A fine idea, Mr. Sholmes. It all looks absolutely delicious.
Eat as much as you like, there are always seconds.
This could be our last chance to ask questions before tomorrow's trial. About that telegram from Japan, and about Kazuma. I can't let this opportunity slip away.
Well,
Before we do that, we do have new stuff in the court record, which we are going to check out, of course. So let's check this contraption out. You see those little things all over the place, don't you? It's the part on the top of the pocket watch that you twist to set the time, isn't it? It's called the crown, I believe. A watch would be quite useless without one. The crown? Like what sits on top of a monarch's head? That's a very grand name for such a tiny part. But actually... Yes, Mr. Naruhodo? If this is a crown, I have a feeling I might have seen a monarch around here somewhere with a very bare head. If by monarch you mean a pocket watch, then I'm quite sure you have. Well, that is good to know, and we are going to supplement the watch immediately. Sorry, guys. What do you think, Mr. Sato? I feel sure now exactly what I feel fit here. Really? I was just thinking precisely the same thing. We're about to see that the little round component is actually part of Inspector Gregson's broken pocket watch. Really? I was just thinking precisely that too. A perfect fit. I knew it. Alright, perhaps you knew it. I'll make a note of this new information at once. The details of the small component have been updated in court record. A small machine part that Mr. Sholmes found in Judge Jigoku's, I don't know why I always say Jigoku's cabin on the SS Grouse. It's now clear that it's the missing crown of Inspector Gregson's pocket watch. Well, so we now know that. And we had other stuff added as well. Evacuation drill notice for 31st October. Following departure from the port of Dunkirk, all crew members are required to assemble on the main deck at 10 p.m. in order to review evacuation procedures. The drill will take 20 minutes. Crew to resume duties as soon as the drill is over. And the great sword Karuma, of course. We will check that out. Have a look at this, guys. This is a sword. Karuma, the great blade. It's such a thing of beauty, I want to gaze on it for hours. Aha. So... let's take a look at the blade. The tip of the great sword, broken. It's such a shame, it's been so meticulously cared for over the years. I can almost hear Karuma's sobs. Kazuma must have really taken a swing for that to happen. Nothing else of interest then, I guess? No? Okay. What else do we have? The passport, well, we already checked that out. And we have checked this out. Okay. So we got everything. So, time to examine. We're gonna take a look at everything. We do have time, guys. I don't want the game to end, to be honest. It was such a great game. I mean, why do I speak in past tense? It is a great game. I'm sorry. I finally managed to remember this behemoth's name, the Great Analytoscope. I don't think it was here when I left for Japan, was it? Oh, is that right? Yes, because it was with the pawnbroker. Ah, of course. Oh, that's given me a wonderful idea. I could pawn everything that's on your desk. The office would be tidy at last. Don't even joke about it, Mr. Sato. You are joking, aren't you? I think she might actually be serious, but that's okay. Okay, let's have a look at the shelves. There's all sorts on these shelves. Chemistry apparatus, books, papers, and lots of things I've never seen before. If you are bored, just skip ahead, guys. There is a timeline down below, so you can just skip ahead. That's fine. Yeah, I just want to be thorough. It's all heaped up so high I can't help feeling that the whole lot is going to topple at one moment. It looks as though it might topple, and yet it doesn't. The epitome of Mr. Sholmes' brilliance. I don't get it. As it happens, I'm quite well practiced when it comes to stacking the shelves myself. Just the other day, the shelf in my office finally gave way under the strain, though. It looks as though it might topple, and it does. Yes, the epitome of your disarray. I really don't get it. Alright. Although we had all of this, I think the only important thing might actually just be this board. This blackboard is where Iris scribbles down her latest ideas, isn't it? Let's see. Oh, she seems to have drawn a lot of little stick figures all lined up. Look. Cheap apples at the market is what all of them say. What? The little figures can speak? All your questions would be answered if only you would read this month's Rand's magazine. So I'm the only one who can't make any sense of this. Alright. Okay, nothing else of interest, I guess. What about the... Okay, the feast is something new. So we're gonna check that out, of course. Roast beef, kippers, stew, steak, and kidney pie. Yorkshire pudding. It all looks mouth-wateringly good.
Indeed it does. And if it were accompanied by even a morsel of pheasant, it would be perfection.
You're still on that?
Oh, it really does look like a feast for celebrating a victory in court.
Or indeed, for drowning one's sorrow after defeat.
I hope you weren't referring to the trial tomorrow, Mr. Shawns.
He's clearly still in mourning over the pheasant at the moment. Alright. Okay, so we can only talk to Mr. Sholmes, it seems, right? Yeah, nobody else here. So let's talk to Mr. Sholmes immediately. Mr. Sholmes, what are you doing?
Surely it's abundantly clear that I wasn't brooding over Mikotoba's refusal to show his pheasant with me. Nevertheless, I felt the need to withdraw from the social circle for a while and look on with hungry eyes.
Huh.
Sorry, Hurley, but I cooked that pheasant especially for Susie's daddy.
Even though I've played the role of father to you for far longer.
Mr. Sholmes, could I discuss something with you?
Certainly, my dear fellow, I find myself quite in the mood for a spell of conversation. No doubt. You're hungry to learn more of my deep love for game.
I can probably contain my curiosity on that one.
You needn't look at me in that fashion.
In what fashion?
It seems that before we discuss the pheasant, we have some rather unpheasant matters to discuss.
Well, are we supposed to present stuff to him, though? I really don't know. Let's just talk to him. The telegram from Japan. So, what was in the telegram we received back from Japan then?
Ah, this. I thank my lucky stars it arrived in time. Record found as indicated. Duplicate follows. K. Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson.
What? Those 4 names? We've come across that exact same list before. They came up in the unforgettable case last spring. Yeah, it was the very last case in the first game. What appeared to be a simple case of aggravated murder turned out to be a masking monumental intrigue. A plot that involved the sale of British governmental secrets to foreign states. In exposing the names by which those secrets were being leaked, we deciphered a fragment of a message. K. Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson. But we didn't find the names out until the case was over, and we never did get to the bottom of what they meant. All we knew was that the information had been sent by somebody in the British government to somebody in Japan. So, why are the names coming up again now?
Yes, where did the sender of your telegram discover them, Mr. Shawns?
I have here the message I had wired yesterday. Allow me to read it to you. Enter Judge Jigoku's office undetected and investigate telegram records. Expect to find communication from Britain dated 1 year ago. List of 4 names. Need by tomorrow. Naruhodo.
I sent it to a detective I know who specializes in clandestine missions of this nature.
You asked Inspector Hosonaga to undertake such an onerous task for you?
And in my name? I wonder what guise you opted for this time.
My dear fellows, it was a matter of great urgency, you understand?
Anyway, the list of names was found in Seishiro's office, as Sholmes predicted. So you mean that mysterious collection of names that was sent from Britain to Japan was...
It was sent to Judge Jigoku. He was the intended recipient.
I don't believe it.
But that doesn't answer the question of what the list of names actually signifies.
I did formulate a hypothesis about that. But without a shred of evidence, I couldn't possibly have shared it.
Mr. Sholmes looks deadly serious for once. The telegram from Japan has been entered into the court record. Oh, let's have a look at this. Record found as indicated duplicate follows. And those four names by Inspector Hosonaga. Okay. Kazuma's death. The tragedy we had to go through on the SS Boria, it was all for nothing. Kazuma wasn't dead at all. We were completely taken in by the lie you told us. You great detective's lie.
I took no pleasure in deceiving you. However, at the time, all that concerned me was preventing the young man's study tour from taking place, whatever the cost.
What?
I capitalized on the events that transpired to see that he was sent back to Japan.
His remains, you mean?
Precisely, Miss Susato. And then, I made sure that somebody else was sent to Britain in his stead.
Oh my, you mean?
The arrangement between our two countries was already in place. One university student lawyer and one judicial assistant to be accommodated on a study tour. In other words, by arranging for someone else to fill the place originally intended for Mr. Asugi, I would successfully prevent the man from arriving on our shores for several years at last.
Wait, do you mean to say that it was all in aid of stopping Kazuma coming to Britain? That's why you...
Think back, Mr. Naruhodo. Was there not somebody who quite casually urged you to continue on the voyage to England?
The terms of the study tour were negotiated by the Department of Justice in both Great Britain and Japan. In the light of Mr. Asugi's unfortunate death, I'm afraid the study tour can no longer go ahead.
My dear fellows, the majority of problems have an extremely simple solution, you know. All you require is one lawyer and the study tour can continue, surely.
But there's no one else with the necessary qualifications, Mr. Sholmes. We know of no other lawyer.
The voyage to London still promises a good month of time. Ample opportunity, I would say, to find yourselves another suitable lawyer.
So, you manipulated me!
I've often remarked on the extraordinary lengths to which friendship will drive a man. I was quite sure that you would rise to the challenge for your late friend.
I don't believe it!
But if it all was contrived... I mean, what happened was treated by the authorities as murder. A woman was mistakenly arrested as the perpetrator. What do you suppose became of her?
Naturally, I didn't allow the misapprehension to have any serious repercussions. I subsequently explained everything and assisted the unfortunate soul in finding the foreign refuge she sought.
I seem to remember Miss Susato and I had some rather strong words for her.
Well, she was certainly not devoid of all guilt. She deserved every word, I'm sure.
I wonder if she made it to America then.
I'm afraid I simply cannot comprehend it. Why would you go to such lengths, Mr. Sholmes? Why were you so determined to stop Kazuma-sama from reaching Britain?
The truth is, 12 months ago, there was already a very tangible omen of the impending tragedy, you see. An omen that, at this very moment in time, is close at hand.
An omen of all these tragic events that already existed a year ago is close at hand? We need to find out exactly what Mr. Sholmes knows. Okay. So we're supposed to present something to him. So is it just Karuma that we're supposed to show him? Mr. Sholmes, would you mind looking at this?
This is hardly the time, Mr. Naruhodo, as I'm sure you will appreciate.
No, of course not.
My attention is entirely drawn to one single matter now, the pheasant.
Anyone would think you hadn't eaten in weeks. Okay, so that's not it? So is it just a telegram then, maybe? It is! Okay, there was no room for doubt with your instructions in this telegram, Mr. Sholmes. You were very clear that it was Judge Jigoku's office that should be searched, so... You obviously knew that's where the list of names would be found.
K. Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson.
But we only learned of those 4 names just over 6 months ago now. And only because they appeared as part of the top secret government communications that were leaked.
That's true, yes. But at the time, you were unaware of the background. You see, those 4 names were wired to Japan. Around 6 months before that, approximately this time last year in fact, when you were both still in Japan. It really would be hypocrisy in my part to reprove the others for intercepting state secrets. Because after all, I'm perpetually eavesdropping on communications between the British and Japanese governments.
You're perpetually doing what? How?
Never mind the details, but you should know. No secret is safe from Herlock Sholmes, but he has designs on knowing it.
Oh my, Mr. Sholmes, what a fabulous line!
Now, 1 month after that list of 4 names was wired to the recipient Jigoku in Japan, Dr. John H. Wilson was murdered. As soon as I learned of the incident, a hypothesis rapidly took shape in my mind. As it turned out, I was partly correct, and partly mistaken. Nevertheless, it was the beginning of all the tragic events that would follow.
Mr. Sholmes, please, tell us all you know. Tell us about those 4 names and the tragedy to which they are all somehow connected.
The 4 names.
As I said, when I learned of Dr. Wilson's murder in Japan, my mind immediately turned to those 4 names because, you see, there was someone else on the list who I believed to be recently deceased.
What? Who?
A. Shin, as it was transcribed in Japanese script. In actual fact, Miss Azashin. That was a familiar name to me. She was a professional killer well known among London's unsavory classes.
Oh, I see.
But she had completely vanished from existence several months before Wilson's murder. So I came to the logical conclusion that she had herself been killed. And accordingly, I became fearful for the lives of the remaining 2 persons on the list.
Ah, K. Asogi and T. Gregson.
Owing to our proximity, I decided to take measures to protect Gregson myself. But I determined it would be safest if young Asogi were to stay away from Britain.
Ah, so that's why you went to such lengths to prevent a study tour from going ahead.
Exactly.
So, you already knew who Kazuma-sama was, Mr. Sholmes?
Oh yes, Sholmes and I have exchanged correspondence for years. I'd recounted many tales about Asogi to him in my letters, and the news of Dr. Wilson's death, of course.
Sorry, guys.
So, Dr. Wilson is dead then? I didn't know. Oh, Iris. I know he wasn't my daddy, but still, that's very sad. I'm so sorry, Iris. We knew the significance of the name, obviously, but we just couldn't bring ourselves to tell you. No!
But what you just told us, Mr. Sholmes, doesn't completely tie in with the facts. There's one big hole in your hypothesis.
A big hole, Mr. Naruhodo?
Ah, yes. You mean about Asashin, I presume.
Oh, of course.
Exactly. She wasn't killed, was she?
She was in Japan, posing as a visiting student under the assumed name of Giselle Bratt. I'm glad you're keeping up, my dear fellow. But I only became aware of that fact 2 days ago in the foyer of the Great Waterloo Hotel.
Ah!
And upon hearing that startling revelation, the hypothesis that I'd formed surrounding those 4 names was completely turned topsy.
What? Topsy? Topsy hypothesis. What do you mean when you say your hypothesis was turned topsy, Mr. Sholmes?
I had believed all 4 names on the list to be the names of victims. However, I was mistaken.
Very much so, Assassin was a killer. So this telegram is a list of both victims and killers, is it?
Indeed, and it would seem that Miss Shin was dispatched from Britain with the sole intention of dispatching Dr. Wilson. Her visiting student status being merely a front.
Ah! Which would of course explain why no motive could be determined for her actions.
So the real reason Dr. Wilson was killed by Assassin is because she was the target of an assassination. He wasn't was the target of an assassination. Sorry, guys.
And forearmed with that knowledge, fresh consideration of this telegram puts the list in a very different perspective.
What do you mean?
Well, does it not strike you? There is another among the 4 who subsequently became a visiting student.
Wait, you mean?
But of course, a name you know only too well.
You mean Kazuma? Oh! He did say in court earlier today. Yes, on 31st October, I accompanied Inspector Gregson to Dunkirk in order to carry out a mission.
And the mission was?
The assassination of the monk.
Young Mr. Asugi accepted that mission a year ago now.
Surely not.
In conclusion, this document is a contract of sorts. An international agreement, one might say, detailing an assassin exchange.
An assassin exchange? How could Kazuma possibly have got involved in something like that?
Assassin exchange. Let's assume that we have 2 parties, each wishing to dispose of a distinct individual. Those 2 parties then make a contract to swap their respective assassination targets. That would then be an assassin exchange.
So to begin with, the British assassin is dispatched as a visiting student to Japan, where she kills her target. And then, the Japanese assassin is dispatched as a visiting student to Britain in order to eliminate his target. It certainly does sound like an exchange.
But what on earth is the point? Don't forget, Naruhodo, that the British assassin at least escaped conviction, thanks to diplomatic immunity afforded by consular jurisdiction. Oh yes! Such jurisdiction should be null and void under the terms of the new treaty between our 2 countries. So the fact that it was brought into place suggests intervention at the very highest levels. The highest levels?
These murders were 2 sides of the same coin, linked not by a common motive, but by contractual agreement. As such, they appeared utterly unrelated, yet in truth, the assassins were complicit in one singular devilish scheme. That dissociation and the safeguard of diplomatic immunity were, I believe, the motivation behind this plot.
But wait a minute, Sholmes. If this telegram really is describing the exchange of assassins as you're suggesting, it would mean that the Japanese killer's target was never Seishiro Jigoku at all. It would mean that Asugi's target was actually Inspector Gregson. What? Kazuma was here for Gregson? So Jigoku wasn't actually the mark?
Yes, that's exactly what it would mean.
I hold myself personally responsible for failing to keep the inspector safe.
Mr. Sholmes.
I told him of my fears and implored him to seek a transfer to an overseas position. Obviously, with a young pickpocket in tow.
Yes, Gina.
Come to think of it, Inspector Gregson did mention that to us at the great did mention that to us at the great exhibition. That he'd be transferring to the Paris police and taking Gina with him.
But without informing me, he engaged in one last assignment, it seems. And sadly, it turned out to be his very last.
This is too much to take in.
Alright, everyone, that's quite enough of all that serious talk for one day. Is it early? I mean, look at the time.
Ah, quite right, Iris. We must conclude our preparations for tomorrow.
What preparations? Well, I think I shall make my way back to my hotel room now. This has certainly been a night to remember.
It is a little bit sad, though. I mean, I like the idea of you being my daddy. Because then Susie would have been my big sister.
I'm sorry, Iris.
I know, Iris. I was thinking quite the same thing. Were you? But if somebody like me would be worthy, I would be delighted to become your sister. What? Really? Oh yes, without question. So, you'll teach me all the ways you know to throw Runo off the floor to the floor? Yes, yes, of course. It would be my pleasure.
You didn't have to agree quite so readily.
Oh, but wait a minute. If Susie's going to be my big sister, you could be my big brother if you want to, Runo.
Uh-huh. I mean, yes, of course. If you'll have me, I'll gladly be your brother.
Well done, Iris. We must always be mindful of feelings. I've raised you so well.
Because being sensitive is your strong suit, naturally.
Right, I'm going to work extra hard for tomorrow now, because it's for my big brother and sister.
What is all this talk about preparing for tomorrow? Preparing what?
Hee hee. You'll just have to wait and see.
Oh.
Good luck in court tomorrow. I'm expecting a sterling performance.
I'll do my very best, of course. So the overnight break in the trial's proceedings became a crucial turning point, exposing new truths whilst posing new conundrums. That list of 4 names on the telegram in Judge Jigoku's office, and the extraordinary assassination plot in which my best friend had somehow become involved. I felt as though I had been plunged into an even greater darkness all of a sudden. But at the same time, I felt sure I would see the light again soon. Because I was lucky enough to have the most wonderful family in the world standing steadfastly behind me. Alright guys, I'm sorry that this episode is so long, but I felt like, we're coming to an end. And just having this part done, I had a feeling that this is going to end pretty soon, so dividing it into multiple episodes wouldn't have made any sense. So, thanks so much for watching. If you want to know how the trial tomorrow is going to unfold, you'll have to tune in next time for the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Resolve. See you then.